begin. Thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled and truly honored to have you have the opportunity to speak with both of you, the director and lead actress for Gaadi, Children of the Sun. Our team at CinemaWorld really enjoyed the film and would love to delve more into the creative processes behind its making. And before we move on to the questions, allow me to quickly introduce CinemaWorld to you as well as our new audiences. So, CinemaWorld is the first and only pan-Asian international movie service, and we create box office hits, critically acclaimed, award-winning films from around the world for our Asian audiences in Indonesia, Taiwan, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Philippines, and more. So this August, extending from our July campaign, Cinema World is having an Asian filmmakers spotlight to showcase the diversity of award-winning Asian filmmakers in their unique stories. So Gaadi being one of them, of course. And at the same time, Cinema World's brand extension, Cinema Short, shares this vision of fostering emerging Asian filmmakers by showcasing their short films on our global platform. We are driven to keep the ever-evolving conversation within the Asian filmmaking space alive. Hence, such in-depth interview with renowned filmmakers, both veteran directors like yourself, Mr. Prasanna, and of course those who have broken into the filmmaking scene more recently, like Dinara, would offer great insight for both our audience of film enthusiasts and budding filmmakers. We're very excited to have you answer our questions. So now turning you, we'll dive into the questions.
So once again, it's such an honor to speak with you, sir, and with you, Dinara, as well. So without further ado, I'll just jump right into our first question. So, Mr. Prasanna, we wanted to know what was your initial inspiration behind wanting to create Gaadi, and whether there was any kind of event or story in particular that sparked the initial idea for the film.
I have been always inspired by men and women who stood for their convictions and fought with the system. So when I heard this story about a young girl who was not ready to accept unjustifiable conviction on her, there was a custom during the Kandyan period when noblemen when they conspired against the king at the time, Sri Vikramarajasinghe, they abscond their wives and the mothers and the sisters, they have to face the wrath. So that was the custom. And I heard this story about a girl who didn't accept that. That was the inspiration for Gaadi.
Is it a real story that you then transformed into your fictional story, or?
Actually, Gaadi is, I would like to say it's a fiction based on facts.
We watched Gaadi, we learned that it's a historical period drama set in 1814. And we see that the theme of identity is perhaps one of the most central themes portrayed in the movie. What was the reason behind choosing this time period to showcase identity, and perhaps not any other significant time in the vast history of Sri Lanka?
As the main, theme of the film, the identity issue is nothing to do with that period only. Its main reason is the present, because I believe that today people let's say they are more concerned about their religious and national identities than humanity. So I see it as a problem. Yeah, famous sociologist Francis Fukuyama even wrote a book called Identity, because it's an issue, because everything is colored by our identity, the way we look at the other people. For me, the most important thing in life is self-respect and love. But more than self-respect and love, and as I said earlier, humanity, people are looking at each other on their identity, judging other people based on their identity. And we create a kind of a person that he's or she's other. It's not one of us. That concerned me. And I thought this story will be a metaphor to probe the identity crisis or the issues in the modern world.
Now we have Dinara Punchihewa, who at the time you could say was a relatively new face in the industry, and with this being one of her very first big films, she delivers a hauntingly amazing performance in this role as Tikiri, who barely speaks throughout the film. So we were curious about whether there was a specific reason that you decided to go with a relatively new face in the industry, and what your reasons were for picking Dinara specifically for this role.
Yeah, it took so many years to, get finance and cast for Gaadi. I have been trying to do this project for, let's say, about more than 2 decades. So I have spoken to all the actresses in Sri Lanka from 1990s. I mean, it didn't materialize. And when we had the finance to go ahead with the production, then I came to know about Dinara through an assistant director. And when I saw her face, I felt that she's the right person. I judge by actors the strength of their capacity by their eyes. So because Dinara she has most expressive eyes, and I thought that this character is like a child bride. She's married to an elderly person, and still at her heart she's a child and playing with the children and all. That I think the her physicality and her looks, I felt it's right. And when I work with her during the rehearsals, I felt that she will not only the looks, but she's very talented, and she will sail through it.
Right. So, like we mentioned, the role of Tikiri barely has any dialogues through this film, and like you said, Dinara portrays a lot of this character through very emotive and bodily acting, and like you said, through the eyes. What was your reason behind the decision to portray Tikiri in this way?
As a writer, when I'm working with the material, I mean, I try to understand the truth behind every moment. Her silence is not for an effect, because she doesn't want to communicate with this Rhodia who has been forced upon her. So silence is her weapon, not to communicate. And for actors, the most difficult thing for them is to face camera without dialogues. Why? Because when you don't have to do anything, when you don't have to say anything, it's difficult to be front of the camera and to immerse in the character that you are playing. So it needs real talent.
Now, on to a related question to Dinara herself. Other than the directions that you received from Mr. Prasanna in how to portray the character of Tikiri, as I said, an actress really needs to make a character her own. And in your stunning portrayal of Tikiri, it was extremely evident just how well you had embodied this character, Dinara. So tell us a little about how and what you did to portray Tikiri in the way that you did.
I think embodying the character happened with all the workshops that we did, the rehearsals that we did. We rehearsed for about 6 to 7 months. We had shooting for about 3 months. So, you automatically become this character. I think personally, there was a lot of research that I did to, about the women at that time. And I think in terms of silence, I think women spoke less also. And the way they behaved was very different to how we behave today. So there was a lot of things that I did to myself in terms of, even physically, things like growing up eyebrows, like things like that. But I think, it organically happened. And by the time we had to film I was already Tikiri, because it lived and breathed.
So I was going to ask you next about what your emotional journey with portraying a character like this was, but I think you answered that by saying, you you are the character. Do you want to explain a little bit more about the more emotional side of portraying the character?
When you are shooting for a long time, a long period, like around 2.5 months, you wake up as a character because you're shooting long hours from 4 in the morning till 6 p.m., 8 p.m. So you just sleep, wake up, you're doing the same thing over and over again. So I think that was my journey, and I look back and I'm very thankful, and it just brings me so much joy to see how the character resonated with people. And I think, especially as a woman, she broke a lot of barriers, she broke a lot of boundaries. Even an 14 story is so relevant to today, and I'm very grateful for the.
Taruni, maybe I want to jump in with a question for Dinara, because Mr. Prasanna did say that for Tikiri, silence is her weapon. I think that's a both cryptic but a very beautiful way to put it, because there's so much emotions hidden beneath the silence. So for Dinara, basically, how do you portray so many emotions amidst the silence? Like, what are you thinking about? How are you feeling as you are embodying Tikiri? Because the environment is so, it's in the wilderness. And so as Tikiri, as yourself, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think personally, I feel the character and I feel the emotions in my heart. And I think when you feel it in your heart, it's very easy to show from your body and your facial movements and your eyes. So it's just about being very true to yourself. And I think as a person also, I think I'm quite a patient. So I'm very good at giving silent treatment to people. So I think, even in this character, it just felt very easy to do. But also, we did a lot of prep. We did a lot of prep. So when you do that kind of prep, when you're already a character, it just shows, eyes, and it's just about reacting. So your co-actor will do something, you react to it, and it just happens so naturally.
So, with the film being made in 2019, making it almost 5 years old now, what do you think is the significance of the film today? As we know, when it was released, the film was a box office hit in Sri Lanka, and it had such a positive reception by Sri Lankan audiences. What do you think it reflects about the Sri Lankan film audiences and Sri Lankan attitudes in general today?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Because it's not only a Sri Lankan audience. We are making a film for the audience. Now, here the challenge was to make a film to, let's say, audience in USA or in China or Singapore who doesn't know anything about Sri Lanka. Not only the history, even the current Sri Lanka. So, yeah, I believe the strength of the film is its universality about longing for love and respect, and a woman trying to keep her dignity. So all these things I think attributed to reach the audience wherever it was shown at the festivals and in Sri Lanka. So I believe even without you don't know anything about the history and Sri Lankan culture, this film I think will give you a glimpse of Sri Lankan culture during the 19th century, and it will leave something that is valuable, connected with the current politics and the current state that we are all living. Because whatever the circumstances, I think um, there is still space for love and respect and dignity in our hearts.
So, as we know, Gaadi is not only in Sri Lanka, it will be showed to our Asian audiences from around the world. So, my question maybe for Mr. Prasanna is, you did mention in another of your interview that Gaadi was one of your most challenging production out of the 9 films that you've produced before. So, could you share with us a little bit more about what you have faced in the
Yes,
process of making the film? Yeah.
yeah, challenging in two aspects. One, the production aspect, because you have to be truthful and same time sincere to the times that these characters lived. Because I have seen a lot of historical films arousing nationalism. So my challenge was to whether I'll be able to bring out certain truths that has been not been told by Sri Lankan politicians and the mainstream media. So that was one challenge. And the other challenge, as I started saying, the production, whether I'll be able to produce that era authentically. So that's why always a historical film is challenging.
So, like, maybe if, because since you mentioned that this project has been in the making for 2 decades, how
Yeah.
different would it have been if it was made in the 90s versus it was made like right now? Like, what do you think the biggest difference is in terms of maybe
Uh,
acceptance or?
I would have delivered the same message, but it would have been immature. I said that the most important thing, the whatever the audience feel or whatever we communicate, whatever the sentiments that we want to create, it should come from the development of the character. So in 90s, I had a idea, but that idea was not, let's say, it was not fully baked. It was like half baked idea. But during the times, I mean, all the passing years, I have been able to build the story in a, I think, much more. I'm trying to understand each beat, each beat of these two characters
Mm.
rather than delivering a statement.
I think it's really lovely how you the way you build your story, but also the growth of yourself as a filmmaker. Maybe if I could segue to Dinara with that, because some things are definitely best savored in hindsight. So maybe for you, Dinara, what has Tikiri taught you 5 years from 2019?
Thing that I understood is that even in the story, you realize that self-respect and love, especially in Tikiri, it was the journey and it was what she made of her life at the end. And it was not something that she was born with. And she goes from having everything to having nothing. But that having nothing, she got a lot of love and she realized that, it's like all of these things are not in the caste that you're born to, but what you make of your life. And I think that's a really strong message for females and women, even today, because I know the caste system is still prevalent in certain areas in Sri Lanka. And if you take South Asian countries, it is still very much there. So I think it's a good message to society. It also enlightened a lot of people about our haunting history in a way. And I think it's good that films like this are made just to teach people also. If you're not going to take anything else from the film, at least you know what our dark history has been, and we can learn from these. So I think this is what Tikiri has taught me. And in the last 5 years, which flew by very, very fast, I think it's also taught me that strong female characters that push boundaries will always remain in people's hearts.
Yeah, I mean, as Cinema World, we're trying to bring this really beautiful cultural tale with such a powerful message and such a lovely message beyond Sri Lanka to an international audience. So, the question can be for both Mr. Prasanna and Dinara. So, what do you think Gaadi has in its unique storytelling to allow it to travel to so many film festivals around the world and be so well received?
Yeah, and that's where the language of cinema comes. How you are going to tell the story using the visual language is the most important thing in cinema. Because visual language, it's a universal language. Image is a universal language. Emotions that create juxtaposing two images, it's universal. The challenge, it's just a challenge to tell the story visually without giving statements or through dialogues. I worked for that for 30 years from the inception of this storyline. So I hope that's the one of the strengths of the film, and it traveled to, I mean, not only, I mean, all the continents except Africa. Tells the story of the power of the visual language.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think the Gaadi was really very visually captivating. Even without dialogue, there was so much emotion and story translated and conveyed to the audience. So you've come a long way as a veteran filmmaker, and what's a key piece of advice that you'll give to aspiring filmmakers both in Sri Lanka and beyond?
Yes, I think I can make it very short by saying uh, be truthful to the world that you live. And I think it's always better when you read a lot. You have to watch not only the current films, but from the silent era to the current day. And a filmmaker like Martin Scorsese, he has the knowledge of every, every film, most of every film in the world. So there's a saying that he has opened, I mean, most of the film cans, not only from Kurosawa, from Naruse, from Japan, the Chinese filmmakers, and the Eastern European filmmakers, to get how they are the masters or the previous filmmakers or the filmmakers who used this medium before you, watch their movies, and that will be helpful. You have to have strong convictions about what you are doing. Are you doing it for money? Are you doing it to get personal glory, or do you have any more than that? Do you have any, strong, passionate feelings towards that subject? If you are very passionate about that subject, if you feel that no one is telling this story, I should tell this story, then do the film. Otherwise, don't do that film.
So where do you think you draw your inspiration from? Because you said that you read widely, watch widely, from
Yeah.
all the different authors and filmmakers. So where do you get yours? Where do you get your most creative inspiration, I guess?
Yeah, it's literature and cinema both. Still, I'm rereading, let's say, 19th century Russian writers like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and still I'm watching silent era films by Buster Keaton or Harold Lloyd. And you find out when you watch these films, you are not alone. And how beautifully these filmmakers have used the medium, the film language, before you, and you feel like a little child in front of these masters. That's where you get the inspiration.
Do you have any favorite films, perhaps, or even a favorite book?
Yes, yes, of course. Any film by John Ford, any film by Orson Welles, and any film by Akira Kurosawa. There are so many others like Milos Forman from Eastern Europe, and Wong Kar-wai from
Ah,
Asia, and Shou Shan and Jia Shinke. And I was more inspired by 90s by the fifth generation of Chinese filmmakers, Shang Yimou and Chen Kaiger. They are the two filmmakers who introduced Asian cinema to the world after Kurosawa and other Japanese filmmakers. Um, because they came up with a lot of truthful stories like To Live and Red Sorghum, Yellow Earth, and they worked under very hardships. At that time when they started, they didn't have proper equipment or proper money, but they were able to communicate with the world with their unique voices. I admire it.
I'll direct this question to Dinara. So you've written, directed, and acted in your first short film, Bala, which has also traveled to many film festivals. So what is this difference between an actress and a director? And do you have any preference towards each role?
I definitely have a preference to acting at the moment. Maybe one day when I'm more experienced and I've studied the craft a little bit more, maybe I will get into filmmaking and directing more professionally and in a serious manner. But right now, I'm just focusing on acting. Yes, I did direct a short film, but that doesn't make me a filmmaker. It was just like a little introduction to nipping behind the scenes. I also have worked in production. I've worked behind the scenes. So I think the biggest difference for me is um, you're an artist, when you're an actor, you have to just focus on only your character. But when you're a filmmaker or a director, you have the burden of the entire production in your hands. So I think that's a huge responsibility. So like you asked me, what do I prefer? Definitely acting at the moment.
What about your inspirations then? Do you read widely as well, or do you have any favorite films, books that you draw inspiration from?
So for me, I think I draw my inspiration a lot from the people that I meet and a lot from experience. For example, recently I was at a visa office trying to get my visa, and then I saw an old couple trying to, give their papers in, and the visa counter person was very rude. And I actually thought to myself, this could be a scene in a film, like, how somebody so helpless just needs some help. The point is, I find inspiration in a lot of real life incidents that happen to me and things that I see and things that I hear, and obviously a lot of films. And I mean, one of my favorite films is A Separation. I haven't had time to watch any films at the moment for the past 3 months. Um, my life has changed a little bit because I've just had a baby. Recently, I've started watching Hira Mandi by Sanjalila Bansali. So yes, definitely I draw my inspiration from all of these experiences, and meeting new people from all over.
Are there any upcoming projects for both of you then, both Dinara and Mr. Prasanna, whether it's acting or directing?
I am acting in a documentary film in a couple of months. So we're doing pre-production for that, and I have short for which I'm releasing hopefully this year, end of this year.
And my new film Paradise, it got released on 28th of June worldwide, and it's running at the moment in Sri Lanka and other many countries. So I'm involved in the promoting the film at the moment, and I'm working on another story idea, and I hope to I'll be able to work on the script and start shooting by next year, January or February.
That sounds great. We wish you the very best with your film
Thank you.
Paradise. We're very sure it definitely would do well as well. Great. Thank you so much, the both of you, for joining us in this interview. Mr. Prasanna, we will dive way deeper into the specific scenes of the film when we get back with the scene by scene breakdown. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
It
so
was a
much,
great
all
chat.
of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for this opportunity, and I will be joining you on the scene. That I think.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah,
Thank you so
in a nice
much.
way. Yeah. Thank you.
And have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day to you all. Yeah. Bye-bye. Gaadi චිත්‍රපටිය සිනමා ශාලාවක නරඹන්නට නොහැකි ප්‍රේක්ෂකයන්ට දැන් අවස්ථාවක් ලැබිලා තියෙනවා CinemaWorld channelෙන් ගාඩි නරඹන්න. ඉතින් ඒ ඉතාමත්ම ප්‍රීතිජනක මොහොතක් ගාඩි නිෂ්පාදන කණ්ඩායමටත් ඒ වගේම මම හිතන්නේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා සිනමාවට. මොකද අපි මම හිතන්නේ කාලය ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා සිනමා ශාලාවල පමණක් නෙමෙයි මේ නව ඩිජිටල් මාධ්‍යයටත් අපේ චිත්‍රපටි ගෙනියන්න. ඉතින් මම විශ්වාස කරනවා ඔබ මේ චිත්‍රපටිය CinemaWorld channelෙන් නරඹයි කියලා.